Hello and welcome. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to be starting the day on our day 4 of the Someday Starts Today Wellness and Wellbeing and Empowerment Summit. This is such a thrill for me. You might detect from my voice that I am actually a little bit under the weather, but I want you to know that even though my throat and my voice is not cooperating, my heart and my spirit are light and joyful, and I'm so excited to be here sharing this information with you. So if you are jumping into the feed, go ahead and give it a like so other people in the group can find it more easily. Drop a comment here. You'll notice that I'm using StreamYard, which is different from what some other people have done in the group. So there is a link somewhere around this little box with this video. And if you click on that link and allow StreamYard access, then I'm able to see who is commenting. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me. So yeah, go ahead and put it in the comments. Say a hello, say Team Live. If you're catching this as a replay, drop a hashtag replay. And as always, put any of your questions or comments, things that you want to share with me during this talk in the chat box. And if I don't get to it now during the live, I'm absolutely going to be coming back and looking at these things later. And I'm just, again, want to send out so much gratitude to you and so much congratulatory energy that you are showing up for yourself here in this space. I want to thank Jillian so much for putting this all together and inviting me to be a part of it. It is just such an honor and a joy to be here. So for those of you that don't know me yet, my name is Dev Rivers, and I am an herbalist and a kitchen garden consultant, and I'm also the owner of Invincible Gardens. So I help people connect deeply with nature so that they can experience healing and joy through a gardening practice and through connecting with plants. And I'm so delighted because I did put a post up in the group before and got some comments back on what people were interested in hearing about today, because again, gardening and well-being is such a vast topic. Yes, Jill, I see your name. Thank you. Hi, Sue. So great to have you here. Lovely. I know Sue has started with her vegetable garden this year and having good success, so that's really exciting. I'm so glad that you can be here. So basically today, as we look at this whole topic of well-being and empowerment, I want to bring forward our connection with nature, and not only how soothing and healing this kind of connection can be, but also how empowering it is when you tap into this connection and start to make changes for yourself that are either healing or restorative, or really joyful, right? One of the things I experienced when I first started, officially learning how to garden. I'd always been kind of a nature girl and always loved being around plants and taking walks. I actually grew up outside of Chicago in the suburbs, and I, grew up in farmland. And so I remember even as a child, going out and thinking, why is everybody getting rid of the dandelions? I'm definitely one of those people that sees a thousand wishes instead of a weed, if you've heard that expression. So then I went on in my studies and I traveled to Hawaii, and I actually moved from Hawaii to Alaska. And then now, with my daughter and my husband, we are living in Switzerland. So I've lived in some really beautiful natural places, and I've enjoyed connecting in the various places that I have lived and experienced nature. And what it's really shown me is how I can tap into nature and support my well-being through connecting with nature, no matter where I am in the world, whether I'm that little girl admiring the grains of wheat, or I'm thinking about strawberry guavas that I used to forage when I was hiking in Hawaii in my university days, or even just the bald eagles and the bears and all the berries and things I used to enjoy in Alaska. When I moved to Switzerland, I really started experiencing something that I had never experienced before, which was a lot of anxiety. And I called this expat anxiety because I was so uprooted and I was so disconnected from what I knew and who I knew, and that thing where I didn't have my village around me anymore. And so as this anxiety set in, I really just became kind of this dark spirit. So, oh, thank you, Jill, for commenting on my energy. It's something that I really feel like I just got a boost because I just went running out to my garden. I wanted to have a nice tea with you all here today because it's one of the things that I discovered that I love. So I'm having my wild child mug. I'm going to have a sip now. Mm. So I'm enjoying that. And, the thing is that when I was overcome with this anxiety, I needed a new way to connect, both to my surroundings and to my being. And that's really where gardening came in for me. And many of us know, I think, that nature is soothing and comforting to us and also uplifting to us. But the thing is that we need to remember that nature is not just some place that we go. It's not a place we visit, oh, I've got to get out in nature. I want to be, surrounded by nature. In fact, when we can come into this connection that we are nature. We are beings of this living world. And when we can connect to part of ourselves that is nature, we tap into an incredible abundance and an incredible ability to overcome some of those things that might come our way, such as anxiety or depression, or low mood, or even grief. I actually received a phone call this morning that a dear friend's father had passed away last evening, and I thought, wow, what a beautiful transition during this full blue supermoon that we're experiencing right now, and we're in the energy of today, to really recognize how nature is part of us. And when we can tap into that belonging, we can find home within ourselves. We can find nature within ourselves. And then we can tap into all of the abundant resources that nature has for us. So, I want to go into a little bit, just some of the science around, why a gardening practice and how that can help us, and then I want to dive a little bit more deeply into what I developed as a real love. From my gardening practice, which is growing a tea garden and herbal teas, and how those teas can give us energy. They can be restorative, they can be soothing. And we'll talk about how these different herbs affect the nervous system. And then I'm going to empower you with a recipe that you can take away. It's my hug in a mug everyday herbal tea recipe. And this is something you can drink every day. It's very safe. And you can just find a simple way, even if you're in a really dark, low moment, to just put yourself connected with nature, whether you have a garden or not. Because I know, moving to Switzerland and living in a more urban area, I know that many of us actually don't have the time and space to get out and be with nature as much as we would like, or we may not know how to start doing that, right? So let's first talk about why we want to, right? Why is gardening and being in nature so good for us? And basically, it has to do all about the nervous system and how what it does for our nervous system when we are surrounded by plants and surrounded by nature and connected to living things. So, one of the things that we notice is that the stress hormone of cortisol is really high when we are in heightened emotional situations, whether you're experiencing anxiety, whether you're experiencing immense grief, loss, if you are, going through something with your job or your family. These are moments where our nervous system kicks up these hormones and the cortisol levels go up, right? And then this has a negative impact on our body and on our physical functioning. So they actually did a study and it was really interesting. They put people in very stressful situations and then they had two groups, and one of the groups went off and did 30 minutes of gardening. And this was not intense gardening. I think some people can think of gardening as a real chore and it gets heavy lifting and hard work. But this was really just being present with plants. So much of gardening is just observing and connecting with nature. What insects do you see? Do you notice that butterfly? Do you see the bee filling up the little pockets on its legs with the pollen? And so this group that spent 30 minutes out in the garden was compared to another group of people that were given a book of their choice for reading and were just allowed to regroup and come down from this stressful situation through relaxed reading. And they found that the group who had been out in nature doing gardening showed significantly lower cortisol levels than the reading group. So it's also not just about how we're relaxing, it's what we're doing specifically. And some of the benefit from gardening comes from movement, right? Of energy being able to flow through us and move through the body. And it allows those big emotions, the big energy around those emotions to travel through us in a way that is not so detrimental. And we can recover faster when we allow ourselves to get out in nature. So that's one reason that a gardening practice, or just connecting with plants, whether that's in a garden or that's simply, sitting in your office but staring mindfully at a tree out the window, or maybe you put a little plant in your office space, but something green, something that you can connect to, will really help reduce those cortisol levels. The other thing that is physiologically connected to gardening is lowering your blood pressure, right? So those of us who are in intense situations, whether that be work and achievement and striving and constantly pushing ourselves, so many of us are such strong perfectionists, and we need to remember that this has an effect on us, and we need to sometimes step back, and spending a few minutes in the garden or spending a few minutes with the plants can help you bring down this blood pressure, so that you can begin to find a more relaxed, natural rhythm that you can maintain. And another great thing with gardening is the mood boost it gives you. So not only is it lowering these negative hormones or these negative chemicals in the body, or decreasing things that are adding to the pressure that we feel when we are out, it's actually sending us good signals and good things that we can kind of use to interrupt whatever is negative. I'm going to have another sip of tea here. So if you're having a sip of tea with me, let me know. Let me know what you're drinking. If you have any favorite herbs that you love. Oh, thank you. This is one of my favorite mugs. Um, so, when we are connected with nature, right? This is what I love about nature is nature holds everything, right? When we look at I love to look at my compost pile, whether it's food scraps from the kitchen or a plant that got a disease. We can take things that are not going well, that are not in their best state, and we can actually compost them to become something new and bright and beautiful, right? And this helps us remember I love it, black coffee. That's so great, Sue. I totally think all the time I'm always talking about these herbal teas, and then I think, but really, sometimes I just want a coffee. So I'm glad you're having what you need right now. And when we compost things and we allow them to become new, when we tap into this cycle, we no longer are stuck in the oppression of these emotions or these moods, right? We're able to allow them to flow through us and see it all as a cycle. And we're able to be out in nature where we also see that our gardens and nature itself is perfectly imperfect, right? I mean, they always say that, it's we don't wanna have a perfect garden, right? We wanna have a garden that is thriving and alive, and that means that some things are doing really well, some things are not doing as well, or they need to balance each other, and there's kind of this checks and balances in nature that when we bring ourselves out and we become part of that cycle and that system, we can also see how these negative experiences that we go through can be composted and cycled to become something new and different and transform, and it's like the butterfly in the cocoon, that there's this time before the butterfly emerges where they literally biologically have become like a soup within this cocoon, and it seems like such a mess. And you may feel that way in any given moment, but you can know with certainty when you connect with nature that you are going to emerge as the butterfly, that this is how it is meant to be. It is just part of the cycle and part of the process. And when we can watch this in nature, it becomes a really non threatening way to watch how this process can take hold in our own lives, where we can allow ourselves to be imperfect, where we can forgive ourselves or others if need be for negative or traumatic experiences. And we can just have a self acceptance that we can carry forward. So, when you think about, is it worth it? Do I want to start a garden? What I would say is absolutely, because you're getting all of these physiological benefits, which also stem from the psychological effect that being in nature and connecting with plants have for you. But I also now wanna dive into, what does this look like? Because sometimes we start a garden, and I know when I was first learning permaculture, I took my first online class, and I was learning permaculture, which is a regenerative method of gardening, and it's actually a way of thinking and designing so that we are looking at nature, and we're trying to mimic the ecosystems of nature within our own confined space, if that's an allotment or a little garden patch that you have. But basically, we're trying to use any available resources to us, and then we're trying to put them into a system and a cycle that grows and produces more resources and then just becomes abundant, right? And one of the things I saw this bumper sticker this summer, and it really spoke to me that said, "Scarcity is a man-made concept," right? And I think this is something we have to remember because in our day and age, it's scarcity and urgency and do this, and you've gotta have that, and why don't you have this yet? But that is not the pace of nature, right? So when we tap into nature's vibe, her vibe is patience. Everything gets done and nobody is rushing. Nature is never rushing, right? It's all just unfolding in exactly the right timing, in exactly the right place. And so when I started gardening, I was super bummed because I was, doing my first permaculture garden, and I felt like I had the worst garden ever. And I realized I let these pumpkin plants grow that weren't even edible, and then I had taken up all this space, and I kind of got to the end of the summer and thought, like, why did I do all of that? And I realized that it was to discover what worked for me and my garden, right? And how could I use this outer garden as a reflection or a mirror of my inner garden? And what I stepped into from that experience was that I wanted more flowers actually. I loved the broccoli, I loved the pumpkins, I loved having those things, but I wanted beauty. I wanted joy. I was lonely and isolated in Switzerland as an expat, and I needed connection. So I needed to find those plants that would be my allies, that would be my friends. And in fact, that was what really encouraged me to get out in my garden and keep going, was this connection that I developed discovering the plants that I loved to grow, that the plants that loved to grow in my garden. And then those of you who do know a little bit about Switzerland, you may know the culture here is very reserved. And so I found in my tiny village of 800 people, people would barely say hello to me in any given day. But when I went out to my garden, people stopped by my garden and they commented on my garden and they commented on the plants. And I was able to receive that because of the plants. It was a connection between myself and the plants. It was an ability for me to go out and receive. And it was a way for us as people to connect together through a common plant, through a common interest that really saved me and really brought me out of some of this anxiety that I was feeling because I felt like I didn't belong and I felt like I didn't understand the culture. And then I realized that I could belong to these plants, that I could connect with these plants. And so that's really what I wish for you in all of this, whatever gardening or connection with nature you're thinking of doing. Know that it can look the way it needs to look for you. That may be an allotment, it may be a farm, it may be a tiny little pot on a windowsill. Whatever is going to serve you, start small. Start where you are, start with what you have, right? Gardening does not need to be complicated and it doesn't need to be expensive. It can be one pot and one seed. And that's really all you need to get started. And when you start, then you can discover what you love to grow and what loves to grow with you. And that was where I really discovered herbs and flowers. And so that's where what I want to share with you today is about some of these things that came forward as I've now been gardening for many years. As my herbal allies, as plants that I found were particularly helpful to me, and I know are particularly helpful to a lot of people. Um, what I want to talk with you about specifically is herbs that relate to the nervous system, that have a direct impact on our nervous system, because really, our nervous system is, the messenger of the entire body. So whether you're having an overactive mind, whether you're having an unhealthy gut, whatever you're experiencing, there are herbs that will affect the nerves connecting to that body system. And then you can choose herbs that will benefit you and bring you a sense of well-being, and also really this sense of empowerment that you can learn this and you can create something that will really benefit you. So the herbs that I want to talk to you about specifically today are called nervines. So these are herbs that directly impact our nervous system. And I want to talk to you about, what we want to do with our nervous system, because it's not always the same, right? And that's why at the title, I was saying, it may be that you need to restore, that you need to regenerate. I've had a lot of carpal tunnel issues actually this year. I over gardened. I had a move and I spent 2 bitterly cold days out in February when I really shouldn't have been digging up my plants, but fighting against this frozen ground because I had to move my garden. And I overdid it, and I was having, tingling and numbness in my hands. And then basically it was interesting because I've had this medical experience where, diagnosed with carpal tunnel, but it's not actually carpal tunnel, right? It's a bigger nervous system issue. And so I've been looking at this topic heavily and applying these herbs in what I'm drinking, what I'm consuming. And so for me, I have needed some more restorative teas or some more restorative herbs. But it may be that you are actually having low energy. I kind of feel like things are overfiring and going overboard in my nervous system, and I'm needing to kind of calm down and restore. But it could be that you're having very low energy and you actually want to be boosting your nervous system, giving yourself some kind of stimulant, right? So we're going to talk about three different kinds of nervines. So one of them is a nerve tonic. Okay, so a nerve tonic has that word tonic in it, and the base of that word is to tone. So these are herbs that are great in an everyday sense in a lot of ways because they are promoting the overall tone of the nerve fibers themselves and the nervous system. So this is an amazing way to have the daily benefit of just toning and strengthening and improving the quality of your nerve fibers every day. So things that are nerve tonics would be things like skullcap. It's sometimes called American skullcap. Sorry, I need another sip of tea. Oh, excuse me. Mm. Okay. Just let my throat calm down there. I'm so sorry. I've caught a cold this week, so I've been trying to do tea all week. Um, so another nerve tonic that you can use daily is lavender. That's a great nerve tonic, and it's also a wonderful relaxing herb. If you're struggling with sleep, if you're struggling with getting to sleep or regulating sleep in your life, then lavender is a wonderful herb to add as well. Um, and one of my favorite herbs and nerve tonics is lemon balm. This plant is in the mint family. It grows voraciously, and it is a lovely nerve tonic. I'm going to turn my microphone off for one more second. Thank you for bearing with me, everybody. Okay, so those are the nerve tonics. So these are herbs that are working in the sense of toning and regulating and strengthening the nervous system all the time. And the other thing that we may want when we're feeling low energy, right, is we may actually want to stimulate the nervous system. So the thing that we can do if we need a little bit of energy, right? We know caffeine is something that will boost our system, but what is something natural that we can use that also works? So a couple of nerve stimulants, if you're feeling like you really need to increase the energy that you have. One of them is my favorite. It's called Schisandra. It's also known as the five flavored fruit. So this plant is native to China. It's a beautiful vine. It's also called Chinese magnolia vine, and it makes these little red berries that are known as the Schisandra fruit. And this is a wonderful stimulant for our system, right? And what I love about combining the herbs that are benefiting our system is we can also then translate that to how is it benefiting our garden system when we begin to look at our garden as a whole. And one of the things I love to do with my clients is to develop forest gardens or food forests where even in a small space, you're able to take a variety of plants and put them together in a system that works together. So something that a lot of people know about or may have heard about is the Three Sisters method of gardening. So this goes back to the indigenous people of North America, and they were always planting corn or maize and beans and squash plants together. And that's because you normally have beans that are growing up a vine, and they love to grow up the corn stalk, right? And then you have the corn that needs to be densely planted together, but also doesn't have any way to shade out the weeds and other things that might be competing with it. So that's where the squash plants come in because they come with those gorgeous broad leaves that spread out. And so this is a really small way to think of this. And then we just take this and scale it up when we want to do bigger edible landscapes or entire food forests. And we go from these 3 layers that are benefiting each other to 7 to 9 layers. And so, for instance, Schisandra, this fruit that I'm talking about now that is a nerve stimulant, is also a wonderful vining plant to add in a small space where you maybe need to go vertical with what you're growing. You maybe don't have room for it to spread out. This is something that you can grow straight up and will vine for you and can be even going across a balcony, creating a beautiful little green outlook for you on a balcony or a patio area. So thinking about these multifaceted uses of the plants, right, and why you would bring these in to your system, both your physical system, what is the purpose that I'm going to get from this plant, bringing it into my well-being or the things I'm making from the garden, right? But also, how is this benefiting the garden itself and that system? Um, so that's one of the stimulants that you can add. Another one is rhodiola. So this is a beautiful plant that is another great nerve stimulant. And that really helps to give you a boost of energy. And you'll notice that these things often have very bright flavors. And so it's kind of the thing too, where you can start to play around with, what does your garden system need? What does your body system need? What is your palate craving? And be a bit intuitive in what is working for you. So the last category of nervines that I want to talk about are the relaxants. So these herbs are particularly useful if you are experiencing anxiety, stress, sleep issues. These are things that are very well known to be calming and relaxing for the body. So these are things like chamomile. Passion flower is actually one of my favorites. I love to put this in any kind of sleep tea or any kind of tea against anxiety, actually. And what's also wonderful about passion flower is it allows for lucid dreaming. So it's one of those things that if you are really feeling like you need to tap into your creativity, sometimes we need to be in this relaxed state so that we can access this creativity that wants to come out from us. And so, looking at what we can do to relax our nervous system so that those other more joyful and creative sides of us can flow forth. So passion flower is another one of my favorites. Um, so there's many, many herbs that are nervines. I'll give you just a few because I really want you to have some resources and some ideas that you can take away. Because the reason I'm bringing up herbs, both because I love them and it's what has worked for me, it's what I found I'm really passionate about connecting to, but it's also in a sustainable and regenerative way, something that's really important because these herbs often come wrapped in lots of plastic in tiny packages and very expensive. Um, so it's a great way to get started if you're just going to grow one plant, if you're just going to grow one thing in your garden or in your space. Herbs are a phenomenal place to start because they have a lot of bang for their buck, right? They're giving us a lot of benefit. Um, as well as the fact that they are easy to grow, right? These are some of the pioneer plants that when, ecosystems have something like a wildfire or a massive burn, plants that come back are these pioneer plants, and a lot of them are the herbs. And herbs also have a general way that they can accommodate a lot of different soil conditions. So if you're starting to grow and you're not that familiar with soil and amendments and what needs what or what to put where, herbs are a great place to start. So some of the herbs I would love for you to consider is that skullcap, chamomile, lavender, lemon balm, also catnip or catmint. I know it's got the cat part in it, and a lot of people think that it's only for cats, but it's actually a very healing nervine herb for us as well. Passion flower that I mentioned, and for those beer lovers here, hops is actually a great nervine herb, and a beautiful plant, and an amazing plant to watch grow. And another one is valerian. So valerian is a root. It's generally the root that's used with valerian. And this is a great way to just begin to think about what you could include in your garden that would really benefit you. So I am going to need to start to wrap things up for today. I'm feeling my voice going. I'm sorry that I need to cut things a little bit short here with you today, but I hope that you can see how gardening can benefit you, how you could start gardening in a very small way that could increase your well being by lowering cortisol, lowering blood pressure, boosting your mood, right? And then also that you can tap into an easy way to start, which is herbs. And then you can choose herbs that are specifically good for you based on their nervine properties, whether it's a nervine tonic, a nervine stimulant, or a nervine relaxant, and choosing herbs from those categories. And what I would add, right, is if you are not able to grow anything yourself, that's absolutely okay because you can find wonderful sources either locally or online where you can access these herbs. What I love to do is go foraging. You can just go out into the woods, and there's so many herbs that are growing along the hedgerows, along the gravelly paths in the meadows, and they're available and they're abundant, right? So you can know that the herbs are there for you. I actually just had an experience because my daughter was in the emergency room last week with a hurt foot, and they were only allowing one parent in at a time. And I was just pacing the parking lot, and I thought to myself, what herbs can I go find right now that would just help me to see something beautiful and connect, right? And the herbs that I found were lady's mantle, and lavender and yarrow, which is a wonderful healing herb as well. So these herbs are all around us. Nature is abundant. You are nature, and if you can tap into this, um, it will be a beautiful gift for you. I would love for anybody who has any questions to put them in the chat here, put them in the comment box. I do want to share a resource with you before I go. So I have compiled a list of over 65 plants that you can either gather or grow for your own herbal teas. And I've included in there on the list my favorite herbal tea recipe, my everyday herbal. I call this the hug in a mug recipe, and I'll share it with you now. But if you want to have the full list with all of the 65 plants. And this is not like orange mint and pineapple mint and chocolate mint. It's really, there are a couple of things where I promote specific kinds of mint or sage, but it's really a huge resource to you to identify these plants. So you have the common name, you have the Latin name, and I've also included for those that are joining from the US, the hardiness zone of the plant. So this relates to the growing zone and the gardening aspect of the plant. And that would be really useful if you want to try to grow these plants yourself to know what will work in your own climate, in your own context. So that list is available to you if you go to the link pages.invinciblegardens.com, and you just need to give me your first name and email, and then you'll be sent an email with a link to confirm your email. I do not spam. I do not write unnecessary emails, so you don't have to worry. Your privacy is absolutely protected. If you just want to get the list and unsubscribe, that's also fine. I know our days and lives are very busy and full, but I'd really like you to have this resource. So if you'd like to go to pages.invinciblegardens.com, I'll put the link in the chat box after this video. You can get your own list. And then at the bottom of that, there is this hug in a mug recipe. And that recipe, I'll tell you now, is lemon balm. So that wonderful herb that is a nervine tonic. So it's a great daily herb to have. That's why I call this my everyday herbal. You want to take equal parts of lemon balm and mint. And it doesn't really matter what kind of mint you have. If you're a spearmint fan or a peppermint fan, I also love to use apple mint when I'm making a fresh tea. But any kind of mint that you have, equal parts of that, equal parts of lemon balm. And then the secret is to add a sprig of fresh rosemary. Or if you don't have these herbs fresh, just use them dried and just add a pinch of dried rosemary leaves to your tea. So that is the hug in a mug recipe, equal parts of lemon balm, mint, and a sprig or a pinch of rosemary. And that is a very safe herbal tonic that you can be drinking every day to promote your well-being and feel empowered and feel mindful as you make that cup for yourself. Tap into the abundant healing energy of nature. Let that seep in from the mug to you. And if you would like to get that full list of all the plants that I'm recommending you gather and grow, you can get that again at pages.invinciblegardens.com. So thank you. Oh, yay. I love it. People are running out to their gardens to make tea. This is such a joy. So thank you so, so much for being here with me. Again, if you have any questions, I am an active member in this community and in this Facebook group. So feel free to tag me, put your questions here, put your comments here. If you were not able to catch this live, just put a hashtag replay, put any questions that you have. I would love to connect with you after the fact. I hope you all enjoy wonderful cups of tea today and getting a moment with nature, whether that is some herbs you have taken out of a bag and recharged with water and your intention and your energy, whether you're able to get out in a garden space and tap into the connection with nature there, or going out into the forest or wherever you feel at home in nature. I invite you to bring that into your day. And I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here and for letting me be a part of this summit. It has been an honor to be one of your speakers. Thank you, Jill, for organizing everything. It has been amazing, and I look forward to connecting with you all soon.